Actually, I was bar mitzvah day. Okay, do you want to start now?
Sure.
All right. You know, there were many experiences in Poland, you know. Don't forget, I was 13 years old when I came here. So, you know, I experienced many things in Poland, things that I didn't like, you know. Whenever someone talks about Poland to me, you know, and, well, today, they're considered goody two-shoe, as the saying goes. But that was after the war, or after they became communist, you know, and all that. They suffered under the communist rule, you know, so today they sort of toned down, you know. But in my time, which was before 1934, when I came here, before that, there was a lot of anti-Semitism there, especially when you were Orthodox, you know. It was really impossible to live there, actually, I would say, for an Orthodox person. If you became modern, you know, they sort of tolerated you slightly, I would say. But anti-Semitism in Poland was phenomenal, you know. That's how it was. So I was very happy that we came to this country, you know. And of course, when I came here, I went to yeshiva. My father sent me to yeshiva, and I went to yeshiva. I was 16 years old. I went to an Orthodox yeshiva. It was called Das. And then after that, well, I had enough. I decided to get my working papers. You were able to get it at the age 16. I started working for a while, you know. My father over said, you don't want to go to yeshiva, you got to go to work. Help out the family. That's how they usually that's how they acted in those days, most parents, you know. We weren't rich, so everyone had to participate or help out, you know, with the family. All right, so I worked for a while until I was the age of 19, and then of course came the draft. They started drafting. First came, of course, Pearl Harbor. We all know about that. And then they started the draft. They just started drafting at the age of 21. They started. And then, that was 1941, I believe. That's when they started at the age of 21. Then later on, I think it was the end of 41, when they declared war on Germany, they went down with the draft, and they started to draft at the age of 20. That's when I was drafted, at the age of 20. And I went into the Army. I had a chance to become, they call that a 4F, or a divinity student, you know. As a matter of fact, my father took me back to the yeshiva, and the principal there told me, why don't you sit down and learn? You'll become a divinity student, you won't have to go into the Army. Well, I refused, and I was drafted. That's how my Army service started. From there on in, I was drafted, went into Fort Dix, New Jersey. That was the first, that was when we were first inducted. And then they gave you physical exams, and, and all these things that they do before they take you in to the Army. And after the physical, of course, I was given, what do you call that, an A, A1. That's, that I was physically able to serve. And from there, they sent me to Fort Bragg, New Jersey. I took training, artillery training, but it was a short while. It was seven weeks altogether, the training, and they sent my outfit, or the people I trained with. They sent us to a staging area. It was called Fort Dix. That was Camp Patrick Henry, Virginia. That was an area where they shipped out, the servicemen. So after they sent us there, we were supposed to go to Panama to guard the locks. The locks without bagels. The only problem was that it was around Christmas time, and my brother, who was getting married at that time, and this Camp Patrick Henry was wide open because they had just built it, So I decided to take off. I wanted to go to his wedding. I went to his wedding. I came back. I think I was gone for a day or 2 days. I don't remember exactly. When I came back, my outfit was gone. They went to Panama, and then I went to see the commanding officer there in the camp. He didn't know what to do with me, so they decided to give me it's called a summary court-martial. They gave me 30 days in the stockade. That's a stockade was. I suppose you know what a stockade is. It's like barracks with barbed wire around it. So I had 30 days in the stockade, and then as soon as the next boat came in, or I think it was what was that ship? The big boat from England, the Queen Mary, I think it was. That one came in there. That was an area, with the port area. So as soon as the 30 days was over, they put me on that boat, and I had no idea where I was going. Finally, I found out later we're going to North Africa. So I wound up in North Africa in a repo depot. It's called a place where they replace soldiers that's needed in certain divisions or certain places. Now, so the first division was fighting along the British. They were fighting Rommel at that time. The first division was called the Red One, and they had some casualties, so they needed replacements. So what happened? I was in Oran, North Africa. They replaced me. They sent me to the 1st Division. They were fighting in Tunisia. They were mopping up already in Tunisia alongside the British. And that's where I wound up. I wound up in the 1st Division. And then when they finished mopping up, the 1st Division went into Sicily. We landed in Sicily, but the Germans were on the run at that time. They didn't fight much. They hardly fought back in Sicily, and it happened to be around the time of the Naroim, you know. So they decided to give all the Jewish boys from all the from all the divisions and all the corps, from every one of them, they decided. We were in Palermo, Sicily. They decided to give us off on Conedra night, you know. So we confiscated, or I don't know if it's called confiscated. We took an opera house, you know, a big opera house. They had maybe close to 5,000 Jewish boys that came from all over, not just from the division itself. There was the 3rd Division was there at that time, and then they had all these different outfits that were connected with the divisions and the corps, you know. So there were a lot of Jewish boys involved. So they had about, well, I would say about 5,000. And I know it was packed, you know. And then there was they wanted to have someone to chant the Kol Nidre, and there was no one there. And I remember there was a Major Cowell from the division headquarters, from my division. He went around the aisles, you know, kept on asking, is there anyone that knows how to conduct the Kol Nidre service? And well, since there was no one, I volunteered. And I conducted the Kol Nidre service at that time. And the major, he was from division headquarters, from my division. So he asked me my name, and he asked which company I was with, you know, which he was, as I said before, he was from headquarters. So I told him I was with the company. Yeah, you know, I gave him the whole spiel, and he said to me, "What are you doing in the infantry?" You know, because I was like a doughboy, they call it, you know, carrying a rifle. And so he says to me, "What are you doing in the infantry? You don't belong in the infantry. You should be with the chaplain or in the chaplain's office." Yeah, so you know what I told him? See what you can do. All right. So after the campaign, the Sicilian campaign, we still had a shortage of personnel in my division. So instead of going to Italy, we went back to England. The 3rd Division went to Italy. And as a matter of fact, they had to transfer some men from my division to the 3rd Division in order to fulfill their ranks, you know, the 3rd Division. So we were, of course, we were under strength. And so we went back to England. We were in Dorchester, England. It was right near the water. And they sent us replacements. And we were there for 7 months. We were doing amphibious training. We didn't know exactly what we were doing it for, but we had a fairly good idea that it'll probably be for the invasion later on. Anyway, after 7 months of training, amphibious training, we went into the after 7 months of amphibious training, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself. Amphibious training, we got on, of course, we had a very good time in England, I must tell you, for a while. I mean, it wasn't completely training. We had some passes, you know, we were able to go to what was the England, what's the capital of England?
London.
Huh?
London.
Oh yeah. We were able to go to London on passes a couple of times, you know, and we went to, what is it called, in London, where the entertainment is, do you remember where they have all the entertainment there in London?
The West End?
Pardon?
The West End?
West?
The West End?
No, it wasn't called, it had a special name.
Piccadilly Circus?
Huh?
Piccadilly
Circus, you got it. Ah, good for you. Yeah, that's where we went, generally. Where does a soldier boy go? Piccadilly Circus. So that's where we went. And we went to shows, you know. We picked up a couple of girls. It was only 24 hours, you know, passes. We had twice we got passes during the 7 months. And of course, we had the fish and chips. Oh, we always ate that. You know, that was the common food we used to buy. I mean, we didn't get that in the army, so whenever we got passes, you know, we used to get that, which was happened to be very good. And so after the 7 months that we invaded Normandy, and my company was on the LST. It's called a landing or something. We wound up on an LST, the whole company. And before we landed, we were hit by water mines, you know, 1 or 2 water mines, plus 88s that the Germans were shooting on the beaches and on the boats. So before we got on the beach, we took in water, you know, we took in water. I was standing, by the way, I was an assistant BAR man. I don't know whether you're familiar with the guns that we carried up, but BAR had a magazine of 20 rounds in it, and it had a bipod, you know, had a bipod, sometimes you could, and even a tripod, you know, you were able to use it. But you carried it on your shoulder, and it was something like a machine gun, you know, because you could shoot the whole 20 rounds at one time. So I was an assistant to the BAR man. I had to carry his bandolier, you know, with the magazines, plus my own bandolier with the M1 rifle that we had. Yeah, so, you know, his name was Walters. I remember his name, my God. So we were talking, you know, and then after we were hit by the mines or by the 88th, you know, we sort of, it just threw us up into the air, and it wasn't very high, the top part, because it had 2 parts of the LST. It was the lower part, and then there was the deck. So we were standing there and talking, and then I walked away from him, and we got hit, you know. And then after we got hit, I hit my head on the ceiling, like, you know. And I came down. I look at myself, you know, to see if I'm all right, you know. I see everything is okay. Nothing happened to me, except I was like up to the water was up to my knee, you know. So I'm walking back to the Walters, you know, the gunner, because we were supposed to be together, you know. I was his assistant. I'm walking back. He is laying laying in the water with his head, you know, with his mouth into the water, you know. So I start yelling, Walters, Walters, what happened? What happened? He doesn't answer, you know. So I grabbed a hold of him. As I grabbed a hold of him, I noticed his whole arm was gone. The whole arm up to part of his shoulder, you know. And everyone was running up like a ladder. They were running. There was some chaos, sort of. And they all ran up on the deck, you know. They figured it's safer up there rather than to be in the hole, like. So I'm yelling, somebody help me. I said, I want to get him up. And nothing took nobody out. They were all gone, you know. So I grabbed a hold of him, and I put this one arm that he had. I put it over my neck, you know, and I schlepped him upstairs, you know, to the deck, and I started yelling, medic. And then the medic came over and then took a big piece of gauze, like, you know, with some sulfur, and he sort of spread the sulfur on his shoulder like this, and he slapped it on, and he said to me, you go ahead, we'll take care of him. That was the end of it. You know, it's a funny thing, I never saw him afterwards. And I always wanted to see him when I got discharged, you know, to see what happened to him. But I never got around to it, and I don't know why I never did. Well, anyway, that was the end of it. So finally, the boat got on the beach, partially anyway. So we had to get off. We were in the water, you know. Of course, I don't have to tell you what we saw in the water, all the casualties, you know. So the next thing we did in the south, we were looking for some shelter, like, you know. We were looking for a place because they were shooting. They kept on shooting at us. You know, the 88s were coming down, and the small arms fire. Excuse me. So we were looking for some places, you know, where we can, you know, we can dodge the bullets. You know, finally he got us together, the sergeant and the first lieutenant. He got the platoon together. He didn't get the whole company, but the platoon. And he told us, we got to move out of here. We got to go up on the hill. Otherwise, you'll be casualties. You'll be. So we started to move. You know, as we moved, there was already what do you call that? A space, not a space. What is it called? It was a little walk, like that was already made by the first. You know, we were the second
Wave.
Second wave. I was in the 18th Infantry of the 1st Division, the 18th Infantry Regiment. So you had three regiments: 16th Infantry, 18th Infantry, and the 26th Infantry. The 16th Infantry was the first one. They took the brunt of the casualties, you know. So what happened was when we came and we're looking for shelter in there, and as I said before, the first lieutenant said, we have to go up on this walk. they made a walk, sort of. So every couple of feet we saw they didn't evacuate these people. It seems like they evacuated the very heavy casualties, but these people that lost their arm, part of their arm or part of their legs or something, they were sitting there or laying there, waiting to be evacuated. So they're the ones that made this walk for us to be able to go up on the hill. Because the Germans were shooting down from the hill. So finally, when we get up on the hill, and what happened was actually, but they lost their limbs from what they called mines, personnel mines that they had on the beaches, So, as I said before, so finally we went up that area that they started going up themselves, that they made for us. Really, they're the ones that made that walk for us to be able to go up. When we got up there, we were strafed by the German Luftwaffe. They started to throw at us what they call personnel bombs. I suppose they didn't. It was the Luftwaffe was the small planes, not. They didn't have the big planes especially when we were there. I mean, at that time. So they were strafing us, and they also dropped these personnel bombs, So we were looking for cover. The first thing we did, they had these hedges with ravines, so the best thing was to run for the hedge and drop down into the ravine. It was like not a foxhole, but they called the other way. It was dug out, for the water to go through. As they strafed us and they bombed us, I felt something burning in my chest, So I opened up my shirt. I saw something red over there, Something sticking out. It's a piece of shrapnel that was sticking out, and I pulled it out, And I called the medic. I called him over. So he took some sulfur and put it on, and put on a big Band-Aid over it. And he said, "You know what? I'm going to write you up for a Purple Heart." So I said to him, "Look here, I don't want a Purple Heart. I don't want you to write me up, because I'm afraid that if they're going to send a telegram to home, they'll say I'm wounded. They'll think I'm half dead or something. Better forget it." By the way, that cost me 5 points, and I had to serve an extra 6 months in the Army because I was short 1 point. They had a point system in the Army in those days. So then you needed 85 points for it was for time served and for the campaigns that you went through, all these things. So I wound up with 84 points. I was missing 1 point. For Purple Heart, you had 5 points. So I had to serve another 6 months in Nuremberg, right near Nuremberg, in Ansbach, Germany. Getting back to the invasion. So we wound up, as I said before, on Omaha Beach, that was called. And we went through the invasion.
Do you remember which sector of the beach you were on?
It was Omaha Beach, that was called. The sector was quite big, I mean, you couldn't tell. All I know is that we had to go up on the hill in that area. It's fairly steep, and the Germans were shooting down from there, but they eliminated them after a while. You know, it was fairly safe to go up there, except like I said before, the Luftwaffe was shooting at us even though we were around the hill already. So we stayed on defensive position for quite a while at the beach, you know, and then we continued on in France. From France, I think we went to Belgium. You know, we did quite a bit of fighting to France, and from France we went to Belgium, and from France to Belgium. Yeah, actually, from France we went to Belgium, and then from Belgium went into Germany. This is how the division traveled or went. This is the way we went. So, and it was around winter time already. It was around winter time, and and I didn't hear anything. I mean, you know, the major said to me, he says, "What are you doing? What are you doing here in the infantry? You should be with the division headquarters with the chaplain, because our division did not have a chaplain, a Jewish chaplain. They had a Catholic chaplain, they had a Protestant, but they didn't have a Jewish chaplain. So he felt that if I could be there, you know, I could help out somehow. And we kept on going. We kept on fighting, and I didn't hear anything. I thought maybe he could do something to have me transferred, you know. So we fought all the way through France and through Belgium, and then they started. It started the bulk. What do they call that?
The Battle of the Bulge.
The
Battle of the Bulge.
The Battle of the Bulge. It started. It's right around that time that I heard from this major, you know. And then I found out later on that he kept on sending requests to have me transferred from division headquarters. He couldn't order a transfer, only a request. Every time the request came in, my company commander refused it. No, he was a captain. But what happened was, on D-Day, he was one of those gung-ho types, you know. He went ahead of the whole company, like. On D-Day, he stepped on the mine, on a personnel mine. When they evacuated him, he was hit by an 88. He and the whole crew that took him with the stretcher, they were all killed. So what happened is the first lieutenant, they had a first lieutenant, which was, he was his second in command to the company commander. He took over the company. And when he got the request, he called me in. He said, PFC Fuchs, I have a request here from the division headquarters. They want you there. And they want you to assist the chaplain, the Catholic chaplain. So this is the way they had to do it in order to get me down there. So he didn't get his captaincy. He didn't get it yet. The commission, you know, he was waiting for the commission. So he figured if he does the division headquarters a favor, he'll get his commission. So he asked me, do you want to go? Do you want to go to the chaplain, to the division headquarters? So I told him, yes, sir. I said, if they need me, I said, sir, if they need me, I'll gladly go. And I did. I went there and I became an assistant to the Catholic chaplain. He says to me, "You're going to be my driver. What I want you to do, beside that," he says, "whenever we need a service for the Jewish personnel, which we have here in the division, you'll conduct it, because we don't have a Jewish chaplain." So I agreed. And he says, "You're going to drive my Jeep." So I told him I never drove, you know. So he took a sergeant. He said, "Don't worry about it. The sergeant will take you in the Jeep. He'll show you how to do it, and you'll be okay." So I went there. I went with the sergeant. We went for a big ride. I remember into the road and the fields, you know. And the sergeant says to me, "You take over." He told me this is first, second, reverse, you know. He showed me. And I did okay. But then when it came to reverse, I didn't know how to do it, you know. So I went around in the field like, you know. He says to me, "Hey, you're not doing so good." But he says, "Keep on driving." Then on the way back there was a big boulder on the road, you know. Instead of avoiding it, I went right into it. And I wrecked the Jeep practically. And then we got back somehow. We got a ride back, you know. We couldn't take the Jeep. We got a ride back to the division headquarters. And the Catholic chaplain calls me and he says to me, you know, Mr. Fuchs, Private Fuchs, says to me, "I don't think it's a good idea for you to be my assistant or drive my Jeep." He says, so he got me into division headquarters with the medical corps, you know. So then it started the what do you call that? Again,
The Battle of the Bulge.
the Battle of the Bulge started, and I was helping out the medics. I didn't know too much about medics, but I helped carry stretchers and things like that, you know.
Did you miss the service?
I'm not up to that yet. I'll get to it. And so I was helping out and carrying these stretchers and things like that. And there were a lot of casualties at that time. Not so much from bullet wounds and things like that, but from the frostbite. Some of them, they had to amputate toes. It was so bad. You know, they seemed like they didn't have the proper clothing or the proper things, you know, to keep them warm, because they were in the Battle of the Bulge. They were on the defensive for a whole winter practically, you know, and that's all. And it was just terrible. So then finally the winter was over, you know, and the winter was over, and then it was around the high holidays. They got the idea, you know, they got the idea that they should have a service for the Jewish personnel, you know. They got the, you know, that they should have a service for the Jewish personnel. And since I was helping out the Catholic chaplain, and I was helping out with some of the services that the Jewish personnel needed. That's the same picture over here. It was around. It was around. It was around the Yom Room coming up at that time, and they knew that I was the helping out the Jewish personnel in the division. So how they got the idea about having the service, that I don't know exactly.
Yes, you do.
Pardon?
Yes, you do. It was the reporter from NBC.
Oh yeah,
Radio.
the reporter. What was it, Cassidy or Cassidy?
Cassidy.
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 Yeah. Cassidy. He got the idea that we should have the service on the. We already had captured one of the major cities in Germany. It was called Aachen, Germany, and it was right near the Siegfried line. They had the Siegfried line was. You can see there all the cement boulders that they had, the Germans. So we had it there, right near the Siegfried line. We had that service, and you can hear the service that I did. I conducted for the Jewish personnel. You know, we did some singing together, like the Enkelokenu and Yigdal. You know, I think there was a few other songs. I don't know if they recorded that, but the service, not only was it taking place in Germany, but it was recorded in the United States from coast to coast. Everyone heard that service going on.
It was played on the radio, on NBC Radio.
On NBC Radio.
And it was co-sponsored by the AJC.
Okay.
That's
Did you
why
hear that?
And the tape was found by the AJC in the Smithsonian. So if you go to YouTube, you can listen to it like 500,000 other people did.
I have.
You have?
Yes.
Great.
At the time, were you aware of the Holocaust?
We were aware of it, but not as much as we found out afterwards. You know, at the end of the war, then we really found out how atrocious it was.
Did you ever get any reaction from German civilians that you saw when you were wearing a kippah or conducting a service?
They all said they knew nothing about it. You know, that was their excuse. You know, they knew nothing about it. They had nothing to do with the Nazis. You know, the Nazi party. Each and every one of them told you the same thing. Not only that, I'll tell you even something better. They were Polish personnel in the German army, and they were the ones, they volunteered, and they claimed that they were conscripted, you know. In other words, they claimed that they were forced into the army, you know. But it wasn't true. The fact of the matter was there were a bunch of anti-Semites, you know. And they didn't bother them when it came to killing Jews, killing persons. I mean, yeah, listen, they had, from the Ukraine, they had these guys guarding the camps, you know, the death camps. So more or less till the end of the war, we found out exactly what was happening, you know, you could tell it. And then, of course, they had the Nuremberg trials, you know. We were there during the trials, you know. We were in Ansbach, Germany, right close to Nuremberg. So we knew exactly what was going on already, you know. Yeah. I believe I covered more or less everything, unless you have any questions that you feel you'd like to ask. I'll gladly try to answer it.
Thank you. You've covered pretty much everything that I've written down to ask you, just by asking one question. Do you have any thoughts about what should be done to educate the youth of today about the experiences of Jewish soldiers during the Second World War?
Educate them in what respect?
To tell people that not many people are aware that there were so many Jewish fighters in the Soviet Army and the US Army and the British Army.
Oh, that's true. That's very true. Well, if they want to, I'll be happy to be one of the speakers and go anywhere they want me to. And I'd gladly, you're talking about maybe high schools or colleges or whatever.
But what do you think they should know, apart from you telling your story? What do you think they should know about the Jewish soldiers in the American Army? You were not the only
Oh,
one.
well, of course, they should know that there were many of them in the army. There's no question about it. In the armed services, not just in the army, in the Navy, and in the Air Force, they were all over.
And did you experience any anti-Semitism in the Army?
Yeah, well, that's another story. You always had some. You ran into some anti-Semitism, you know. I had a Polak sergeant, you know. He was a prize fighter, a heavyweight at one time, you know. So he didn't exactly like me. I remember when thank God it was only during the time that I took my basic training, you know. And then after that, I was finished with him, you know, because he didn't come with the outfit. He remained as in Fort Bragg, you know, as one of the training. He was training the other doughboys. So I ran into him. We used to do what they call calisthenics. You know what calisthenics is? So we did that, you know, every morning we had to do that. You know, so one day he decided to make a ring. We went out to the field and he made a big ring around the field. And he said, and he gave everybody a pair of gloves. He says, this is going to be our calisthenics this morning. You're going to box, you know. So he goes and pairs up everybody in the not the company, it was just a platoon. He pairs everybody up, and I'm left alone. So he said he called me. He didn't know to call my name properly. Instead of calling me Fuchs, he used to call me Fuchs. He says, Fuchs, you and I are going to spar, you know. Yeah.
Did you win?
Are you kidding? He was a prize fighter in civilian life. So he gets a hold of me and he starts punching me in the head, you know. And I can't reach him, you know. I can't even reach him. The only thing I was lucky that he had a big beer belly, you know. He liked his beer, you know. So finally he tripped on a big rock. And not so big, but he tripped on the rock, you know, and came toward me, and I'm holding a fist. I got it right in his stomach. So he flattened out. He became my best friend after that. But thank God, after I was sent, you know, to the area we were, and he was left there, you know, so I didn't have much else to do. But then later on, I had some things. The last part, that was very interesting. The last part that I ran into is anti-Semitism, which was I was on guard duty. I was on guard duty in Germany toward the as a matter of fact, it was at the end of the war, not just toward the end, but it was at the end of the war. You know, as I said before, I had to serve 6 months extra after the war. So I was on guard duty. So when you were on guard duty, you were able to get chow ahead of the company. They gave you chow, and then you went back on guard duty. You know, you didn't eat together with the company because this way there was no one on guard. So I came in for early chow. And this lieutenant that's in charge of the mess hall, he says to me, you damn so-and-so, he called me a lousy Jew or something like that, you know. He says, you want to go out and fraternize with the Fräuleins you want to, so that's why you want early chow, you know. Yeah, you know, I didn't have much to do with them because, you know, in the mess hall was a different unit, like, you know. You only went in there to eat there, but you didn't know anybody there. I mean, you didn't. So he started calling me names, you know. So I got peeved, you know, and I said to him, sir, step outside, you know. So there was a couple of steps. It was a big mess hall, you know. It was like a big tent, you know, one of those tents like the ones like if you play tennis and, you know, they're like a bubble, you know. So you had a couple of steps there. So he goes out with me. Goes out. So as soon as he made one step there, I pawed him. I flattened him out right away. I didn't walked away from him. He was on the ground. He says to me, "I'll get you, you so dirty Jew," and so forth. And he goes, reports me to the company commander, you know. And he said, and the company he says they're going to what do you call it? Court martial you. I'm going to see to it, you know. So they call me in. The company commander calls me in, and he was fair, you know. He wasn't an anti-Semite or anything. He was fair, and here's my story, and I showed it to him. I showed him on black and white that I was on guard duty, and I was entitled to oily chow. So he looks at it and he says, the mess lieutenant, he says, "I want to bring up charges against him. I want to court martial, you know, he's bickering." So you know what the company man said to him? He says to him, "You better keep your mouth shut. If you say anything derogatory against this PFC, I'll have you court-martialed," he said to him, "because you had no right to say what you did," and so forth and so on. So I was, thank God, I said that's over with, because it was about a month later I was supposed to be discharged. So that was my last, my last what do you call it, in the army that I had with this guy. The only thing you had to do, you had to be firm, otherwise, you know, they stepped on you. Either way, you know, the anti-Semitism was, I would say, prevalent in the army. In my opinion, you always ran into it, you know. Another guy there in my unit, you know, he was the nicest guy. Every time he got drunk, he started to bitching, you know, he started to anti-Semitism and things like that. I had to flatten him out too, you know, and he didn't even know because he was drunk. He didn't know what happened to him. But that was the only way to do it, and that's how I got along. That was.